Current liabilities tayo. Okay. Meron akong gusto i-emphasize kasi sa current liabilities na yun. Yung exception to the rule. Ano ba ang current liabilities? Ang current liabilities class, ito yung, these are the liabilities, okay? That are considered maturing within the next 12 months after the balance sheet date. Okay? Meaning, a currently maturing obligation is considered as a current liability and that is the general rule. Anong gusto kong sabihin exception? Exception to the rule is, a currently maturing obligation is not considered as a current liability but is properly considered as part of non-current liability. Ulitin natin. A currently maturing obligation or an obligation that is maturing within the next 12 months after the balance sheet date is considered as a current liability. Therefore, a currently maturing obligation is considered as a current liability as a general rule. And what is the exception to the rule? The exception to the rule, a currently maturing obligation is not anymore considered as part of current liability, but is to be considered as part of non-current liability. Yan yung gusto kong pag-usapan natin na simula. Okay? Paano? Paano mangyayari? Kailan magiging exempted? Okay? Okay? Ang currently maturing obligation, kailan siya iti-treat as part of the non-current liability? Mangyayari yan sa tatlong scenario. Okay? Tatlong scenario. This is A scenario, this is B scenario. Okay? Hindi, tatlo yan. Under A kasi may dalawa. 1, 2, at ito yung pangatlo. Okay? Kailan mangyayari? Kapag nagkaroon ng refinancing. What is refinancing? Rolling over of obligation in the next balance sheet date. Okay. Ganito yan, class, ang concept ng refinancing. No? Okay. So, sa madaling sabi, kung nasa Pilipinas ka, kung alam mo yung konsepto ng paluwagan, that is a perfect example of refinancing. Alam mo ba yung paluwagan? Ganito yun. Ang paluwagan sa Pilipinas, dalawang klase. Isa, bawat buwan may tumatanggap na miyembro. Pangalawa, yung magko-contribute sa isang pondo at magkakaroon ng isang liquidation date. Paano yan? Let's say magkaka-opisina tayo. Sa opisina natin, nagko-contribute tayo ng tig 1,000 pesos every payday. Okay? Yung 1,000 pesos mo from January to December, 1,000 a 15, 1,000 katapusan, okay? Matatanggap mo yan kailan? Lahat ng hinulog mo, matatanggap mo. Let's say, the liquidation date is December 23, bago magpasko. Lahat ng hinulog mo, every payday, matatanggap mo, lahat yan sa December 23. Okay. Eh bakit pa tayo naghuhulog? Naghuhulog tayo, one, para may maitabi. Pangalawa, kasi class, pwedeng mangutang yung members ng paluwagan. Pag pwedeng mangutang yung members ng paluwagan, ibig sabihin mayroong corresponding interest. Ibig sabihin, mag-generate yung paluwagan natin ng tinatawag na interest income. Pagdating pala ng December 23, matatanggap ko lahat ng hinulog kong tig-1,000 mula January 1 to December at magkakaroon ako ng tinatawag na share sa income ng paluwagan. Nakuha. Yan yung paluwagan na gusto kong sabihin. That is scenario number 2. What if ganito? Si Mr. B ay miyembro ng paluwagan natin. Nangutang siya ng 20,000 pesos. Ibig sabihin that 20,000 pesos, kailangan bayaran mo yan hanggang December 23. Okay? Kung babayaran niya yan hanggang December 23, that is considered as a current liability. Okay? Because the term is within the next 12 months. Okay? So that is a current liability. Now, yung paluwagan, kung nasaan tayo nag-i-invest class, ay tumagal na. Let's say, 10 taon na. 10 taon na tayo na nasa opisina, 10 taon na rin natin ginagawa yan. What if ganito ang senaryo? December 21 na, hindi pa nakakapagbayad si Mr. B kasi wala siyang pera. December 22, nagbigay ng Christmas bonus, nga lang pinambayad na rin sa ibang mga bayarin. Naiwan na hindi nabayaran yung paluwagan natin. Ano ang gagawin ni Mr. B? Meron siyang pwedeng gawin. Lumapit siya sa officers ng paluwagan natin. Since magkakaroon naman ng panibagong set of books next year, pwede bang hindi ko muna bayaran yung 20,000? I-carry over na lang natin yung 20,000 as my personal loan or personal advances, utang, kailan? In the next set of paluwagan. Ibig sabihin, i-roll over niya yung kanyang obligation, okay, sa susunod na taon. And that is rolling over of obligation or the so-called refinancing as a technical term. Okay, refinancing or rolling over of obligation. Sa accounting, hindi naman ganun kasimple. Okay? Ang gusto kong i-address natin dito ngayon, kailan magiging non-current liability ang isang currently maturing obligation. Ganito yan. Pag pumasok sa refinancing. Pag pumasok sa refinancing, okay, at ang refinancing ay na-approve. Okay? If the refinancing was approved on or before the balance sheet date, if the refinancing or rolling over of obligation was approved on or before the balance sheet date, pasok na siya sa exception to the rule. Meaning, that currently maturing obligation is not anymore considered as a current liability but should be properly presented as part of non-current obligation. Ulitin natin, if the refinancing agreement was approved, okay, entered and approved on or before the balance sheet date, the currently maturing obligation is not anymore considered as a current liability but should be properly presented as part of your non-current liability. That is scenario 1. Okay? The second scenario, again, kailan pwedeng maging non-current liability ang isang currently maturing obligation? Again, kapag pumasok sa tinatawag na refinancing agreement. Okay? Ano itong mga dates na yan, sir? This is BS date, that is balance sheet date, and this is what the date wherein the FS or financial statements are authorized for issuance. If the refinancing agreement was approved after the balance sheet date, the approval of that refinancing after balance sheet date is not enough to be considered as part of the exception. Okay, halimbawa na-approve after the balance sheet date, but before the issuance of FS, this is not enough para pumasok sa exception to the rule. May isa ka pang hahanapin dito. There will be an additional requirement para pumasok sa exception. Ano yon? That the entity has the discretion to refinance. That the entity has the discretion to refinance. Okay? Kailan mo hahanapin itong requirement na to? If the refinancing agreement was approved after the balance sheet date but before the FS are authorized for issuance. Okay? So pag nasatisfy yung dalawang requirement na yan, pasok sa exception to the rule, ang currently maturing obligation is not anymore considered as current liability but should be properly presented as part of non-current liability. Okay, ingat ka dyan kasi ito lumalabas to sa auditing problems, yung mga mahabang problems, tapos babanatan ka magkano ang total current liability at total non-current liability. Pag lumampas tayo ang concept ng refinancing, delikado tayo dyan. Sampulan natin class. So, wag tayong pumunta dyan. Pumunta tayo dito sa, wag muna si item 1. Okay? So, puntahan natin si item, let's say, item 3 tayo. Item 3. Dito sa item 3 class, sabi niya dito, item 4 muna tayo. Item 4. Sabi sa item 4, ang tanong class, how much is the present? How much is the present? How much is presented as current liability in relation to RC's 20x1 in relation to the loan in RC's 20x1 year-end financial statements. Kwento ko na lang para mabilis. Nangutang si RC ng 4 na milyon. Okay? Loan payable as of December 31 that is maturing July 1, 20x2. Ibig sabihin, since this obligation will mature July 1, 20X2, this 4 million is considered as a current liability. Kasi magmamature siya within the next 12 months after the balance sheet date. And any obligation that is maturing within the next 12 months after balance sheet date, as a general rule, should be considered as a current liability. Yon. Ang gusto niyang itanong sa'yo dito, how much is presented as current liability in relation to this 4 million loan? Ano ang nangyari? Kasi kung statement 1 lang or the first sentence lang, automatic, this 4 million should be properly presented as current liability. Kung sentence 1 lang. Nga lang may sinabi sa sentence 2. Ang sabi sa sentence 2 ganito, on December 1, 20X1, RC Company entered into a refinancing agreement with the bank. So pumasok saan? Sa konsepto ng refinancing. Pumasok sa refinancing agreement with the bank to refinance the loan on a long-term basis. The refinancing or the rolling over transaction was completed December 31, 20X1. Ulitin ko, the refinancing and rollover transaction was completed December 31, 20X1. Nasaan yan sa concept map na pinag-uusapan natin? Nandito. The refinancing agreement was approved on or before the balance sheet date. If the refinancing agreement was approved on or before the balance sheet date, the currently maturing obligation should now be properly presented as part of non-current liability. Okay? Chat box, please. Okay, chat box, please. Using item number 4, magkano ang presented as current liability in relation to this 4 million loan of RC at the end of December, as of December 31, 2021. Okay, magkano ang presented as current liability? Sagot class. The refinancing was approved on December 31. So the answer will be 0. Okay, why? This 4 million, kahit na currently maturing siya within the next 12 months will be considered as non-current obligation because of the refinancing agreement that was approved on December 31, 2021. Okay? So, let's now go to item 2. Ganun din. In item 2, ano ang tanong sa item 2? Magkano ang current liability in relation to the loan of PE? Okay, si PE may 4 na milyong loan as of December 31, 20X1. Maturing again July 1, 20X2. On February 1, 20X2, si PE pumasok sa refinancing agreement with the bank to refinance the loan on a long-term basis. Both parties are capable of honoring the agreement's provision. Okay? PE's financial statements were authorized for issue, okay, March 12, 20X2. Okay? How much is presented as current liability in relation to PE's 20X1 year-end financial statements? Ulit, kailan nangyari ang refinancing agreement? Feb 1, 20X2. Okay? The refinancing agreement was approved February 1, 20X2. Okay? Tanong, magkano daw ang i-present na current liability in relation to that 4 million loan? Sagot. Saan sasagot? Sa chat box. Okay. Yan. So, ano nangyari? Nangyari, class, na approve after the balance sheet date. Pag na-approve after the balance sheet date, di ba February 1, 20X2 yung problem natin. Sabi natin, the approval of the refinancing agreement after the balance sheet date is not enough for an obligation to be converted as part of non-current liability. An additional requirement must be satisfied. And that is what? That the entity has the discretion to refinance. Okay? Balik tayo dito. Okay. Ang sabi ng problem, nagkaroon, na-approve ang refinancing agreement Feb 1, 20X2. Therefore, this is after the balance sheet date. Anong sabi natin? The approval of the refinancing agreement after the balance sheet date is not enough for an obligation to be converted to a non-current obligation. May hahanapin ka pang isang requirement. Ano yun? That the entity has the discretion to refinance. May nakita ka ba dito that PE has the discretion to refinance? Pag wala kang nakita, this 4 million, okay, hindi yan pasok sa exception to the rule. Okay. New set of answers. Magkano ang current liability in item number 2 as of December 31, 20X1? Okay? So, that is the question. Sagot ka ulit. Okay? Post mo ulit sa chat box. Okay. Sige. Para mas malinaw sa iyo yan. Siguro, wag muna tayo sa item 2. Punta tayo sa item 3. Sa item 3, ganun din. 4 na milyon na bago lang yung tao. Si QE lang. Okay? So dito, si QE may 4 na milyong utang maturing July 1, 20X2. On Feb 1, QE entered into a refinancing agreement to refinance the loan on a long-term basis. Both parties are financially capable of honoring the agreement's provision. Next sentence says QE has the discretion to refinance or roll over the loan, sabi niya, for the next 12 months. Okay, QE's financial statements were authorized for issue March 15, 20X2. Magkano ang current liability in relation to QE's loan as of December 31, 20X1? Again, item 3, kailan na-approve ang refinancing agreement? That is February 1. And February 1 is after the balance sheet date. And in item 3, QE has the discretion to refinance. Dito muna tayo sa item 3, class. Item 3. Sagutan natin sa chat box, no? Magkano ang current liability ni QE as of December 31, 20X1? Post your answer in the chat box. So, ito tayo ngayon, ha? Sa number 3 tayo. Sa number 3. Yan. Okay? So, yan. Okay? Sige, number 3. Sumagot ka na. Balik tayo sa number 2 before I reveal the answers. Okay? In item 2 naman, again, the refinancing agreement was approved after the balance sheet date. But there is no, additional information that PE has the discretion to refinance. So what is now the current liability to be represented in PE's year-end financial statements? Nandito ngayon ako sa item 2. Magkano ang sagot? Yan. Okay, sige. So, in item number 2, the answer is 4 million pesos. This 4 million pesos is still considered as a current liability since the refinancing agreement was approved after the balance sheet date, but there is no information in item number 2 problem that PE has the discretion to refinance. Okay? So, anong sabi natin sa concept mo? Para maging qualified or exempted to the rule, if the refinancing agreement was approved after the balance sheet date, an additional requirement must be satisfied, and that is the entity has the discretion to refinance. So the answer in problem number 2 is 4 million pesos since nawawala yung isang requirement. Okay? Let's now go to item 3. Okay, item 3. Ito na. In item 3, approved Feb 1 and QE has the discretion to refinance. So the answer in item 3, the answer is 0. This 4 million should now be properly classified as part of non-current obligation since pumasok siya sa exception to the rule na approve ang refinancing agreement after the balance sheet date and QE has the discretion to refinance. Okay. Next problem, wala sa handout natin. But this was given in the board exam. Okay? So, itatanong ko ito, sagutin mo class sa chat box, no? Ito yan, class. Let's say, ang binigay na amount sa board exam is 5 million. Nakalimutan ko na yung amount. Let's say 5 million pesos. Okay? So, 5 million pesos, currently maturing obligation. Okay? And the entity entered into a refinancing agreement and the refinancing agreement was approved on the balance sheet date December 31, 2021. Period. Tapos next sentence niya, nakalagay. However, okay, let's say ABC Company. However, ABC Company has no discretion to refinance. Tapos ang tanong, magkano ang current liability? Ulitin natin ang case facts. Si ABC may utang na 5 milyon na currently maturing. Pumasok si ABC sa refinancing agreement with the bank. Okay? And the refinancing agreement was approved on December 31, 2021. Period. Next sentence says, however, ABC has no discretion to refinance. Magkano ang current liability in relation to ABC's loan as of December 31, 2021? Sagot class, chat box. Okay, may sagot ni si Louie, si Jonathan, thank you, si Renzo, si Kelsey. Okay, so ang sagot din class ay 0. Kasi na-approve kailan? December 31. Panlito lang yung additional info na walang discretion to refinance. Okay, the discretion to refinance, hahanapin natin yan kailan? Hahanapin natin yan kung na-approve ang refinancing agreement after the balance sheet date. Kasi kung na-approve ang refinancing agreement on or before the balance sheet date, wala ka ng ibang hahanapin. Okay na yun. Pasok na yan sa exception to the rule. Sa libro, ang haba nito. Siguro mga 2 pages yung discussion na dito. Nga lang class, iguhit mo lang yan. Makikita mo na kung anong gustong sabihin ng 2 pages. Yan yung refinancing agreement. Dalawa, sir, no? Dalawa na. Ano yung pangatlo? Ito yun. Itong letter B. Ano yung pinag-uusapan natin dito? Kailan magiging ang presentation ng currently maturing obligation ay non-current liability. Okay, ito yan. Kapag kasi nagkaroon ng breach ng terms and conditions, okay, ang isang obligasyon ay nagiging currently demandable. Currently maturing, due and demandable. Di ba lahat ng long-term loan, lahat ng kontrata ng long-term loan, or lahat ng loan meron tinatawag na terms and conditions. Tapos sa mga long-term loan, nakalagay doon, kapag na-breach mo yung terms and conditions, the obligation will now be due and demandable. Okay, ganun siya, no? So halimbawa, ganito. Nangutang ka ng 5 million loan, long term, okay, with an amortization of 1 million per year until the 5th year. So that is long-term obligation, 5 million. 5 million in 5 years. Okay, 1 million per year. O, di ba? That is a long-term obligation. Nga lang, one of the terms and conditions nakalagay, kailangan sa loob ng 5 taon, which is the credit period or the term of the obligation, kailangan hindi ka magkaroon ng boyfriend. Nakalagay doon. Oh, ibig sabihin, pag nagkaroon ka ng boyfriend within that 5-year term, magiging breach of terms and conditions, magiging due and demandable na ang obligation. O, ganun siya. Let's say, after 3 days na nangyari yung transaction, nagka-boyfriend ka. O, ibig sabihin, that is a breach of terms and conditions, meaning that 5 million loan is due and demandable. And a due and demandable loan because of a breach of terms and conditions is considered as a current liability. Ayan siya. Tanong, kailan siya magiging non-current pa din kapag binigyan ka ng grace period? Okay, para ayusin yung gusot. Grace period to rectify the breach. Okay, if the grace period to rectify the breach was given on or before the balance sheet date, class, pasok na yan sa exception. Kailan ulit? Nagkaroon ng breach of the terms and condition at binigyan ka ng grace period to rectify the breach. If the grace period was given, okay, on or before the balance sheet date, that is enough para pumasok sa exception to the rule. Ulitin natin, kailangan ng grace period to rectify the breach of at least 12 months after the balance sheet date must be given on or before the balance sheet date. Anong ayusin yung gusot? Eh di ibig sabihin, makipaghiwalay ka muna kay boyfriend. Parang gano'n. Okay? So, ano nga hanapin? Kung kailan binigay ang grace period to rectify the breach. Para pumasok sa exception to the rule, the grace period must be given on or before the balance sheet date. Okay? So let's now go back to the problem. Okay? So, pero bago yun, meron pa pala binigay dito na hindi pa natin na-solve. Sige na, solve muna natin. Item 4. In item 4, magkano ang presented as current liability? Ay, tapos na si item 4, sir. Nauna natin ginawa yun. O, meron pang isa. Ito. SO company has 10% 4 million loan payable as of December 31 X1 that is maturing July 1, 20 X2. Okay? So, again, current liable yan using statement number 1. Nga lang, may mga sinabi dito. The loan is dated 19X1 and pays annual interest every July 1. Okay, on Feb 1, 20X2, SO entered into a refinancing agreement with the bank to refinance the loan on a long-term basis. Both parties are financially capable of honoring the agreement's provision. SO has the discretion to refinance or roll over for at least 12 months from December 31 under an existing loan facility. SO's financial statements were authorized for issue March 15, 20X2. Magkano ang current liability? May gusto lang kasi akong i-emphasize dito. Kaya binigay natin si item 5. Dito kasi class, sa previous problem natin, pinag-uusapan natin yung buong 4 million. Hindi ka binigyan ng related information as to the interest rate. Dito sa item 5 class, itong 4 million na to, since pumasok sa refinancing agreement February 1, 20X2, at ang sabi si SO may discretion to refinance, ibig sabihin class, magiging non-current liability. Sino ang magiging non-current liability? Ang magiging non-current liability class, yung 4 million lang. Okay? Yung 4 million loan, yan yung nagiging non-current liability. Ibig sabihin class, yung interest na tatakbo from July 1 to December 31, okay? That interest is still considered as a current obligation. Nakuha. So sabi dito, annual interest every July 1. So there is an accrued interest from July 1 to December 31. And that accrued interest for 6 months, which is 4 million times 10% times 6 over 12. Magkano yun? Siguro 200,000, no? 4 million times 10% times 6 over 12, 200,000 interest payable is considered still as current liability. Ingat ha, kaya pag tinanong ka dito, magkano ang current liability? Yung interest. Magkano yung interest na yun? That is 200,000 pesos. But this 4 million is now be properly classified as non-current liability. Nakuha, that is item 5. Let's now go to item 6. In item 6, ano pinag-uusapan dito? May breach ng agreement. Okay? Ano ba ang agreement dito? Ang sabi class, magkano ang presented as current liability in relation to TS in 20x1 year-end financial statement?